Capcom is a company with a lot of really big stuff under their umbrella, and this game's no different.
Let's rock, baby.
Produced by Resident Evil series veteran Shinji Mikami and directed by RE2 director Hideki Kamiya, Devil May Cry was released in 2001 for the PS2, introducing an absolutely wild combination of cheesy action movie nonsense and tough but stylish action gameplay, which took the world by storm. And somehow, I missed it, and it never really caught my eye over these past several years, even though I knew about it. That was until I played Astral Chain by Platinum Games, a company whose reputation for stylish action precedes them. Great game, by the way, if you're a Switch owner. Playing that got me interested in trying more of these sorts of games, so here I am. Is Devil May Cry still a dazzling, stylish action classic? Let's take a look. Dante is a sword for hire. Call him at his business Devil May Cry and give him the password, and he'll deal with your demon problem. For the right price. He's actually half human and half demon, as he's the son of the legendary Dark Knight, Sparda, a demon who one day woke up to justice and saved humanity from an evil threat called Mundus. Eventually, Sparda was killed, and without him, Dante's mom and brother were killed by demons. A woman named Trish approaches Dante one night, only to try to kill him, including throwing a motorcycle at him.
Time to go to work, guys.
Dante defeats her, and she asks for his help, as Mundus is back and trying to unleash the underworld at Malay Island. Apparently, Dante's a pretty chill dude because he still takes the job and does his thing, even though she just tried to kill him. Also, we see a picture of his mom, and Trish looks just like her. And, well, really that's about it when it comes to the story, mostly. As he explores the castle and surroundings on the island, he fights tons of demonic creatures, including a cast of bosses: Phantom, Nilo Angelo, Griffin, Nightmare, and Mundus. Many of these guys come back a lot. There's a couple of twists along the way. That Black Knight is actually Dante's brother Virgil under Mundus's control, and Trish was created by Mundus specifically to look like Dante's mom to lure him into a trap. Even after that, Dante still forgives her, saves her life, and grieves when he thought she died.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light.
She gets better. The two join up, defeat Mundus, leave the island, and work together at Dante's demon-slaying business, which is now called Devil Never Cry. And the series continues. Now with all that out of the way, let's talk about what we're really interested in with this game, the gameplay. Devil May Cry introduced a style of hack-and-slash gameplay revolving around sick combos alongside a steep learning curve and difficult but rewarding gameplay that encourages you to learn and improve through overcoming challenges. For lack of a better term, I call this stylish action. Some other related games to the genre include Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising, and Astral Chain by Platinum Games, which Kamiya is a big part of, among others. You play as Dante as he explores the castle at Malay Island. If you've ever played a Metroidvania game or an older Resident Evil game, this gameplay should seem pretty familiar to you. You have a menu with a map, various files, and other options like in Resident Evil, allowing you to manage your inventory. When you're not fighting, you're trying to find your way around, collecting keys and other items, and occasionally solving puzzles to progress further into the castle. There's also the occasional platforming segment and even these odd swimming segments, though I think it's clear these really aren't the game's strong suit. Unlike RE, DMC is broken up into missions, although you can backtrack a lot throughout the missions and potentially find useful extra items or even bonus secret missions, in addition to the normal backtracking you would have in Resident Evil style design to begin with. You can buy new moves and items at divinity statues and before you start missions using red orbs, which you earn for killing enemies, beating missions, and from just exploring around. Some other interesting items are yellow orbs, which are lives, blue orb fragments, which give you a health upgrade for every 4 you collect, and purple orbs, which upgrade your devil trigger capacity. Some doors also require you to buy your way through with orbs, but you shouldn't have too much trouble with that. Combat involves using melee weapons, either the default sword Force Edge, lightning sword Alistor, or the fire gauntlets called Ifrit, and guns like Dante's dual pistols Ebony and Ivory, a shotgun, a grenade launcher, or the Nightmare Beta, which is a weird laser gun. By the way, I think it's absolutely hilarious that when Dante gets Alistor, he gets brutally impaled on the damn thing. And then he's totally unscathed afterwards, like nothing ever happened, and it's never mentioned again. Anyway, as you hit enemies and build up your combo, the game grades you as having a combo that's dull, cool, bravo, absolute, or stylish. After you get Alistor, you have a transformation called Devil Trigger as well, which lets you move faster, regenerate health, power up your attacks, and do special moves. Outside of Devil Trigger, your gauge will refill as you damage enemies. You can also dodge with either a dodge roll or by jumping. The iframes you get, especially from jumping, make this your bread and butter, even without going into weird techniques. Defeating enemies gives you stuff, mainly red orbs, but also occasionally green orbs for healing, and you get more rewards for killing enemies at a higher style ranking. Not every enemy is a harmless mook though. Many of these guys are scary, and the enemies absolutely will destroy you if you're not careful. Then there's the bosses. This is the kind of game where the first boss is a wake-up call that you're really gonna have your work cut out for you. I got my first game over here. This is the third mission out of 23, by the way. It's not all brutal destruction though. For starters, at any time you can save your progress. No ink ribbons are needed, though they track how many times you save, and I assume that affects your score, if only for how long it took you to complete stuff. You keep any stuff you collected except for mission items like keys, and since you can buy stuff before entering a mission, this allows you to grind a bit for upgrades or items if needed. Enemies also respawn, which is nice for grinding and for practice. Don't be afraid to take advantage of that, because you're gonna need it. Be warned that every time you buy an item it gets more expensive. Eventually it caps off at an upper limit. Beating a mission gives you a ranking based on different factors, and you get red orbs according to that too. Later on, it gets to be a pretty steady flow of orbs, and since you don't necessarily have to buy every upgrade, you could have a little nest egg saved up. So at least on normal, things get a little easier as you go on. After I got the grenade launcher, I found that Devil Trigger, the launcher, and items were really abusable. You might say I cheesed things a little bit. After beating the game, you're given a ranking and a new game plus option on the next difficulty level. I wanted to see how I would do. The first boss destroyed me, again, and so did the second one, although I practiced that one enough that I was able to beat him without getting hit. Man, that felt great. This game has a steep learning curve. As I said before, I managed to reach the first boss and then immediately got my shit kicked in. Even on New Game Plus, I got destroyed immediately by that very same boss. This is a game that demands your attention. You can't just spam attacks and expect to succeed. You go above normal mode and you'll get destroyed for trying that, since everything deals more damage and is more aggressive. It's all about learning patterns and recognizing what needs to be done and when. You might call it trial and error. The feeling of getting better after finally toppling a challenge, only to find another, is very satisfying. I haven't beaten my hard difficulty New Game Plus yet, but it's really fun and fulfilling. There's a good variety of weapons. Among melee weapons, Dante's default weapon Force Edge is pretty unremarkable, as Alistor immediately replaces it and is versatile enough that I basically just used it for the whole game on normal. Alistor is a jack of all stats, with decent performance in all aspects and really useful moves like the Stinger, Air Hike Double Jump, and the Devil Trigger Air Raid attack. Late in the game when you fight Mundus, you get Force Edge's true form, the Sparta. Aside from its exclusive Devil Trigger, which is only available during the last boss fight, it's basically just Force Edge again, so it's not really that useful. Ifrit is a pair of gauntlets with slow, fire-based, high-power but high-risk maneuvers. I've only grown to appreciate it more in my hard New Game Plus mode, where everything deals double damage to Dante, and everything but Devil Trigger melees do only 33% damage to bosses. Sure, it can't do Air Raid or Air Hike, but it hits like a big rig, and in Devil Trigger it gets a really strong combo move. And you can switch on the fly between your sword and Ifrit by clicking the right stick. You still have to swap between the different swords and your guns in the menu though. Among the guns, Ebony and Ivory are weak but have really useful rapid fire and can be used while jumping or as part of juggling in combos. The shotgun, which is hidden under a desk in Mission 2 so I missed it until New Game Plus, is very good up close. and can be used in something called shotgun hiking. The grenade gun can't be used in the air, but it hits really hard, is very effective for crowd control, and has an animation between shots that you can cancel with a jump, allowing for safe pot shots. There's also the Nightmare Beta, a weird laser gun that uses your devil trigger gauge to shoot a beam that can bounce around the room and hit a lot of enemies. I feel like I'd rather just keep my devil trigger for when I really need it, but the idea is neat. Underwater, all you get to use is the needle gun, which is pretty lame. Besides that, the weapons are fun and have a great balance of strengths and weaknesses. There's not really one weapon to rule them all. The fighting is fun, fast-paced, and snappy. Even playing the Switch version, it runs at a consistent 60 frames per second, and the controls mostly feel responsive. Launching enemies, shooting them up with cool guns, using Devil Trigger and other things are pretty cool. There's a lot of fun to be had messing with the game's different mechanics throughout combat. Fighting stuff never gets old, and with how most enemies are always dangerous, there is always tension here. But one thing that's aggravating at times is the camera. Instead of a free moving camera, the camera is fixed and moves to different camera angles in different areas of the rooms. Because of this, it's easy for you to get disoriented in the middle of moving around a room, or during fights sometimes. For the most part, I found that it was something I got used to, but some fights, like against large enemies such as Phantom, feel like a handicap match against both the camera and the enemy, since the camera is stubborn and likes to make things unnecessarily hard to see. Me getting killed because I'm an idiot is fine and fun. Me getting killed because the camera disorients me in the heat of battle is not fine and fun. Platforming is also occasionally featured. Luckily, it tends to be really low pressure, but the camera angles tend to make it tough to tell where you're going to land after a jump. There's also a little bit of underwater stuff. You swim around in first person, and all you can really do is shoot stuff with the needle gun. Well, at that point, it's basically just a boring shooter. There's also a couple of brief flying levels near the end. I don't really have much to say about these gimmicks, but I think that fighting and exploring are the high points, and these other gameplay styles are just kind of an afterthought. I really like the game's aesthetic. Since DMC1 began life as an early rendition of Resident Evil 4, it shares a lot of its qualities. The game has a really cool gothic horror aesthetic, but also has that absolutely goofy and campy voice direction that you would expect straight out of old school RE.
It might be handy if you, the master of unlocking, take it with you.
The gameplay has a lot of RE quirks like the menus, interactive environments, and fixed camera angles. Seeing how the camera shifts here sometimes make me flail around like a goober, I think I better appreciate the value of tank controls, since that type of control centers your movement around the direction your character is facing, regardless of where the camera is positioned. The game's enemies are a motley crew of demonic creatures. The soundtrack has a dark and eerie atmosphere to it, further emphasized by the absence of other characters for the most part. Even with the goofy dialogue and over-the-top action, it still does a good job building a gothic horror aesthetic. Although instead of being tense and worried about the next creature because it's scary, instead, you're tense and worried about the next creature because it's scary. In conclusion, I think that the original Devil May Cry is still a dazzling, stylish action classic, even if some aspects like the underwater stuff and platforming leave much to be desired, and the camera can be aggravating now and again. It's super stylish, over the top, tough but fulfilling, and a crazy good time. Failing can be fun, but Devil May Cry didn't fail. It set a solid foundation for a whole series and for a genre as a whole. It's only up from here, right? I can't wait to try Devil May Cry 2, featuring Dante from the Shin Megami Tensei series. Oh yeah! It's good. Right? Right?